Welcome back to another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast, powered by the DC4L Network. I'm your host, Marcus Jones, the Bluff City Cowboy, joining you guys live from Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for joining tonight. Got a great show for you guys. I'm a little bit under the weather, so excuse me if I have to take a couple of pauses. But the show always has to go on. Got to fight through the injuries sometimes, and try to put together the best product that you can. So I am expecting you guys to help me out a little bit. Get in these comments, leave some great questions, leave some great comments as we briefly talk about last week's game against the Buffalo Bills. And we look forward to another AFC East competition against the Miami Dolphins. See, we got a couple of regulars joining us in the comments. B. Neil Christian, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you joining us on the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Also, Hector Rosario, thank you for joining us. I see the views are still going up. So if you guys are watching, get in the comments, let me know who you are, where you're from, where you're watching from. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button. Your engagement is what fuels the nation, not only your questions and your comments, but also your likes and your shares. And thank you for joining us, Amanda. Appreciate you tuning in. Kyle Vaught from Missouri, thank you for tuning in. Looks like a new name. If you guys haven't done so already, like I'm saying before, make sure you hit that like button. And also, if you have a YouTube channel, even if you don't join us from YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you guys would go over to YouTube, find me at Bluff City Cowboys, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, help me on my path to get to 1,000 subscribers so that I can continue to help grow the Fifth Quarter Podcast Nation. B. Neal joining us from Florida. Megan Rosario joining us from Virginia. Thank you for tuning in. Got quite a few people joining once again. Let's keep the questions coming. Let's keep the comments coming. Got a lot to talk about tonight. As you guys know, when we have a game like that, I don't focus too much on it. I try to hit the high notes, and then I move ahead to the next week. Once again, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to try to make it through this show as best as I can. I still got all my notes and stuff like that I normally have, but I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about last week's matchup as well as this week's matchup. Got another regular joining us, Rachel Neens. Thank you for tuning in as well. And also, the DC4L group is getting a YouTube page as well. So if you haven't done so already, while you're finding me on YouTube, find DC4L on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button, help them to get to 1,000. And I see I got my guy Chris Wormsley joining us from Memphis, Tennessee. Always good to have another Bluff City brother in the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Tyler, we definitely got to keep Dak off his back. And this is a very big game because the Miami Dolphins are number 2 in the NFL in sacks. So you definitely got to make sure you keep him off his back. On top of that, it looks like Zach Martin may not be playing this week. So that's going to be another interesting wrinkle that's going to be thrown out in this week's matchup. So let's get to it. Let's go ahead and get started. And we will do a game recap of last week's game against the Buffalo Bills.
Game recap.
So, as you guys know, had a very humiliating loss, 31-10 at Buffalo. Once again, the team looked terrible on the road. We were missing our big defensive tackle, Jonathan Hankins, and their running back, James Cook, pretty much had a career day on us, 25 carries, 179 yards, on the way to 220 total rushing yards by the Buffalo Bills. If you guys haven't done so already, I did make a video on my Facebook page, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I broke down the 10 runs of 7 yards or more and kind of gave some insight on why those happened. Wanted to misspell a couple of rumors and misconceptions that were thrown out around Cowboys Nation about why those big runs continue to happen. So if you guys get a chance, if you haven't done so already, go find my Facebook page. Also, go find my YouTube channel so you can check out that video. So this week, I don't have any offensive notes. I mean, to be honest, looking at the game, we pretty much started off behind the 8 ball. There was not much that our offense could do, being down 3 scores before halftime. It became a one-sided game early. We had to abandon the run. That team, with all their pass rushers, was able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, and they did a great job of it. So it's hard to gauge that game and give any notes because of how unusual it was for this team and how they were able to perform. But I do have a couple of defensive notes, and I'll get to those. So first of all, looking at that game, they ran the ball all over us, and we continue to play what I call small ball. If you go back and watch the game, and I talked about this in the video. If you guys go to my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, you'll see that video. The defensive tackles we played with were extremely small. I mean, we have big Carl Davis who weighs 340. Carl Davis only played 14 snaps. We have Neville Gallimore, who's been here forever. He only played 16 snaps of defensive tackle. On the opposite side of that, Dorrance Armstrong, who has been a defensive end, played almost 27 snaps, with most of those being in the inside, as well as defensive tackle Chauncey Golston played 28 snaps, all at defensive tackle. Now, both of those guys are about 265 pounds, and we were playing a team that was continuously running the ball at us. The fact that they did not put in the big guys on the inside was just completely alarming for me watching them play that game. The defensive tackles, those two small defensive tackles got beaten off the ball every time. They gave no penetration, and the tackles and the tight ends were able to just play one-on-one with our defensive ends and whichever linebacker we had on the outside. To add on to that, outside linebacker, we continue to put Marquise Bell, playing him at essentially a Sam linebacker spot where he was playing outside the defensive end. The tackles were just completely blowing him away. What the team did to offset that is they didn't put Rashawn Evans in, 240-pound Rashawn Evans. No, they put in Wanye Thomas for the entire second half to play as a linebacker. And you guys saw what happened when he was in the game. We have a big linebacker on the roster. We did not use him. We have Dante Fowler, who can play some Sam linebacker in a game like this. We didn't use him. We played entirely too small, and an offensive line that, in my opinion, was average to below average, just ran smash mouth right down our throats the entire game. That's point one. Be near Christian, 100% right. You guys go watch the video. All of their long runs, the tackle from the backside would pull across and eliminate the outside linebacker, and the running back would just follow that tackle and break free 7, 10, 20 yards. Most of their big runs were outside. When the defensive tackles, the actual defensive tackles played, they actually played pretty well. People gave Mozzie Smith a bad rap this week. Mozzie Smith had what I would consider a B+ game, which was very solid. Only one or two mistakes, but none of them that were like game-breaking mistakes like we saw from some of the other defensive tackles. Amanda Foster saying, we discussed this last week. Never expected them to destroy us quite that bad. They took away our ability to play defense the way we usually play. 100%, Amanda. I mean, looking at the game, I just can't tell. I just can't tell how they did it. Hector saying we did nothing right in this game. Players or coaches. I'm not even going to talk about the penalties because They turned 3 first half penalties into 21 points. Roughing the passer, roughing the kicker on the punt, the personal foul on J-Ron Curse, and then roughing the passer. I can't remember who it was on. But they turned all 3 of those big defensive penalties into touchdowns. And it just put us completely behind the 8 ball, on top of the fact that they just ran the ball down our throats. That's just point 1. Now, point 2. The defense gave way too much emphasis on Josh Allen. I know it's crazy to say that because we know Josh Allen is such an amazing runner. But in this game, he was not the guy that was beating us on the ground. It was James Cook. And again, I'm going to keep saying this. Make sure you guys go watch that video that I posted, because if you watch it, you will see, like I said before, the backside tackles were pulling across. Instead of that end following that tackle, that end would be frozen looking at Josh Allen as he hands the ball off to the running back. If those ends would have just crashed down a couple of times, they could have stopped a lot of those big runs and made them some negative plays. Or Josh Allen could have kept it and ran it. But in my opinion, I'd rather have a quarterback running the ball than a running back who runs a low 4.4, who's 20, 23, 24 years old. Josh Allen may get 5 or 6 yards. That running back's going to break for 20, and that's what happened. And every time you get a hit on a quarterback, you always slow him down a little bit. It's not the same for running backs. So in my opinion, those backside defensive ends paid way too much attention to Josh Allen, and they were so afraid of him that they allowed James Cook to just completely run over us. I mean, Josh Allen only threw, 11, 12 passes. He was not a threat this game. They should have stopped what was working for that team and then made them go to something else instead of letting that one thing work. And that's basically takes me to point 3. I just talked about point 3. Lack of defensive adjustments. The defensive ends would never crash down when the tackle pulled, and those running backs kept hitting us for big yards on the outside. So those are the 3 biggest things that stood out to me in that game. All around, just physical beatdown all around. Hats off to the Buffalo Bills. They did what they were supposed to do. We came into their house on a cold, rainy day. They started running the ball. We didn't stop them, and they kept running the same plays over and over again. And I know sometimes our fan base has this big deal about, well, I hate to see us running the same plays. If the same plays are working, you keep running them until they stop them. And last week's game was a prime example. They kept running the same plays over and over again. We did nothing to stop them on the way to 220 yards rushing. So terrible defensive call, terrible defensive scheme, terrible execution by the defensive players. One last thing. Whoever played middle linebacker was completely irrelevant in the game, whether it was Marquise Bell, Damone Clark, J-Ron Curse, Wanye Thomas, whoever they put at middle linebacker, they were not filling gaps. Now, some of that could have been because the defensive tackles weren't getting pressure and allowing them to get downhill, but you never saw them near the backfield on any of those big runs. So that's pretty much all I got on the Buffalo game. That game is behind us now. Clark definitely got washed on several plays. That game's behind us right now. We're going to look ahead to the Miami Dolphins. Amanda has some offensive notes for us. Take a look at these. She says Dak had no one to throw to. He got a lot of flack, but everyone was covered, and CD got lazy once we got down. Yeah, CD turns kind of into a crybaby when he doesn't get his way. That stood out even in some of his good games. Definitely, like I said before, when you get down 3 touchdowns before halftime, it pretty much eliminates your offensive strategy. You're in survival mode. I wish the team would have run the ball more actually because the run was fairly successful. Even though we were down 21 points, we could have got it to 21-10, 21-13, 28-16, just something to make it look like we were still competitive. But when they kept scoring 21, 28, 31, and we still have 3, that completely eliminates half of the strategy that the defense has to plan for. They never had to plan for us running the ball, and because of that, they're able to let Ed Oliver, who's an amazing pass rusher, go after the quarterback. You're able to let who's the other outside linebacker? I just went blank. The kid from Miami, another great defensive end when you get a chance. Leonard Floyd. They have some great pass rushers. Von Miller. When those guys don't have to worry about the run and they can just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, it's hard to protect the quarterback no matter how good the line is because the line is just getting completely just bombarded with pass rushers nonstop. And yeah, like you said, coverage protecting Dak. Dak kept getting sacked. When you're down 28-3, it's kind of hard to protect your quarterback if you're just not going to run the ball at all. So definitely a lot of stuff that we got to work on. Um, on top of that, we lost Zach Martin in the game. People don't talk about that. TJ Bass did perform admirably, but he is a rookie and he's a backup for a reason. And the defensive line took advantage. I'm expecting a better game from him this week, but we've got our work cut out for us because this defensive line has the second most sacks in the NFL. B. Neil Christian saying not to defend Dak, but it's hard to find open receivers who are scrambling and getting sacked. 100% agree, B. Neil. Same thing I just said. You're down 28-3 in the third quarter, and everybody knows you're going to pass it. A team can just play zone, not worry about the run whatsoever. Those linebackers can fade right back into their drops instead of having to come forward. Those cornerbacks don't have to peek in the backfield to make sure it's not a draw or off tackle play. They can just go back into their sets. Those defensive ends can just rush wide because they're not worrying about a running back trying to run past them. It's hard to throw the ball. It's extremely hard to throw the ball in those situations. Anthony Swinecki, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you tuning in. We're pretty much at the halfway point of the show right now. We're at 20 minutes. I just want to say again, if you guys haven't done so already, go to the top of the screen. I posted the links to my YouTube channel. We also have the link posted to the DC4L YouTube channel. Make sure you guys subscribe. Let's get those numbers up before next week. Let's get this engagement going for DC4L Network. The more you guys support us, the more we can support this podcast, giving out more giveaways, more prizes, doing a lot more special things to thank you guys for all of your support. And yeah, they did play 2 high safeties all night. They didn't have to worry about the run, so you can easily play 2 high safeties when there are no threats of a running back running. All right, guys. I'm not even going to talk about the penalties. It was a terribly penalized game. We made a lot of boneheaded mistakes in typical Cowboys fashion. We've been number 1 in penalties in the league for the past 3 years. These games are inevitable for us. Let's just hope they can correct it a little bit and move forward. And now we're going to go ahead and move forward, talk about this week's matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Should be a very interesting game. Kaleo Richard came to troll. I don't even see Kaleo Richard, so maybe I'll see that coming in a minute. Jeff saying terrible game overall. Exactly, Jeff. I'm putting that one in the back burner. That one's out of my memory. We're looking ahead for these last 3, and we're starting off with this game against the Miami Dolphins. So let's get started. Let's talk about some of the key matchups in this week's game against the Miami Dolphins.
Key matchups.
All right, guys. Before we go to key matchups, we got to go to the tail of the tape just to show from an overall perspective where we stand up against the Miami Dolphins. As you can see, the numbers are pretty even. They're number one in scoring offense. They just passed us after last week's game. 31 and a half points, our 30.8. Scoring defense, we're pretty much neck and neck. We're top 5, they're top 10. We're at 18.9 points a game. They're at 21. Again, mind you, the Miami Dolphins are number 4 in run defense, and they're number 2 in total sacks, and they're top 10 in pass defense. That's why their numbers are so impressive. Our numbers are so impressive because we're +9 in turnover differential, and they're only +2, which, by the way, is still a really good number when you're at a plus for turnover differential. I always try to remind people every week, turnover differential means your quarterback, your offense gives it up this many times, your defense takes it away this many times. The difference between the two, if you're taking the ball away more, is going to be a plus. If you're giving it away more, it's going to be a minus. We're at a +9. I believe we're number 2 in the league right now. Miami's at a +2. So definitely going to be a competitive game, Chris Wormsley. Looking at the tape, we're not going to have the same issues that we had with Miami. I mean, with the Buffalo. Now, Miami does have an entirely different set of problems that we have to deal with, but I don't think we're going to have to worry about a smash mouth running game as consistently as we did with Buffalo, because even if Miami's running the ball well, their offensive coordinator / head coach is not going to continue to do so. Jeff asked the question, why is it so hard for this team to be disciplined? I wish I knew the answer to that question, Jeff. I'm pretty sure our offensive defensive coordinators and our head coach wish they knew the answer to that question as well. B. Neil Christian saying we have to stop Mostert and Achane running wild. Our corners, Gilmore and Bland, need to play tight on Hill and Waddle. Jam them off the line and stick them. Don't give 10 yards off the line. Great points, B. Neil. I hate to say it, you don't want to play tight on their wide receivers. You almost have to give them 5 to 7 yards off because their speed is incredible. If you miss, it's a touchdown. You give them 5 to 7 yards off, you may give up a first if your defense doesn't get home in time. But you don't want to jam because neither one of our cornerbacks are able to play catch up with their receivers, particularly Tyreek Hill. And we're about to talk about some of that in a minute. Amanda saying the best thing we have going for us is there are 3 offensive linemen down. So we'll go to our key matchups. And actually, since Amanda brought us there, that will be one of our first key matchups. And like you said, they are 3 offensive linemen down. But the biggest matchup on that team right now is Liam Eichenberg versus Oso Digizua. Now, for you draft guys, you'll remember the name Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. Very talented tackle coming out of college. Hasn't lived up to expectations so far in the NFL. He was a 3rd string tackle for this team. Their starting tackle, Connor Williams from Dallas, got hurt 2 weeks ago. Liam Eichenberg had to step in at center for the first time since sophomore year of college. And by the way, he's playing injured. He has an ankle injury. They didn't have another center on the roster, so he had to fill in. They still don't have a quality center on the roster right now. So chances are he will be playing center again this week. He was the lowest graded center in the NFL last week. If you watch the game on the replay, you will see why. The guy, he's kind of clumsy out there. He's kind of lanky because he played tackle. He doesn't handle pass rushing well. He doesn't handle strength well. He's not good coming out of that 3-point stance. Also, Diggy should have some opportunities this week against Liam Eichenberg. Amanda breaking some news on the show, saying Ndamukong Suh is working out with the Dolphins. I don't expect much from that, honestly. Just him getting a workout to try to get some buzz and see if Dallas will pick him up. Personally, I wouldn't touch him, but I have my own reasons for that. And if you guys would like me to get into them, I don't mind getting into them. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I know on some of the other Cowboys podcasts, the talk has been, well, we need to bring in some help, and Ndamukong Suh is the guy to do it. I disagree. Hector Rosario saying put Micah over center. 100% agree with that, Hector. If I was the DC on this team, Micah would not be playing edge at all this game. He'd be right over that center. He'd be making them choose. He'd be making them stumble, and he'd be getting to the quarterback because Tua has the fastest release in the NFL right now. So you have to get to Tua quick if you wanna rattle him or you want to get a sack. And the best way to get to a quarterback is a straight line, and that's rushing right over the center. Just like Amanda just said. Great comment, Hector. So we'll keep moving along with the show. Amanda, a great point. Just brought up them bringing in Suh. This is one of the reasons I don't think Suh is going to sign there. The Dolphins have the best set of defensive tackles in the NFL right now. Their defensive tackles are number 4 and 7 highest graded according to PFF. And their defensive tackles are number 2 and number 4 in sacks for defensive tackles in NFL. This team is number 2 in sacks, and there's number 1 and number 2 pass rushers are both defensive tackles. That is completely unheard of for an NFL team. Christian Wilkinson has 9.5 tackles, 9.5 sacks, and the other guy, which nobody knows, I'm sure, his name is Siegler. He has 7.5 sacks as a defensive tackle. These guys are great against the run. These guys are amazing against the pass. And it almost, for all intents and purposes, looks like Zach Martin's going to miss this game. So TJ Bass is going to get a lot of these two big defensive tackles, along with Tyler Smith, who, by the way, he does great against power. He does not do so well against agility. And even though Wilkinson is a big guy, he's very agile for his size. And this Siegler kid, I think he's like 6'5", 300. So he's one of those kind of twitchy, high motor defensive tackles who could probably play defensive end if you needed him to. But these guys are getting after the quarterback, and they're playing the run on the way to the quarterback. So very dangerous defensive tackle set. And I think they're going to give our defense a lot of fits in the run in the past. Amanda says, how sure are we he misses? I saw he was DNP today, but I thought Martin said it wasn't bad. You know, he's going to say it's not bad. Offensive lineman with a quad injury, it really just depends, because the problem with that, and this is offensive line talk, when an offensive lineman gets in his pass sets, he's almost like he's sitting down. Like he's standing up, but it's almost like in a seated position, back straight. Ideally, they want their legs at a 90-degree angle. And in order to do that, you have to have strong quad muscles, because you're using your thighs and your quads to hold your upper body up, keep you balanced, and keep that strength to still not be able to get bull rushed. Jeff says pain tolerance. Pain tolerance is definitely a reason, but like I said, when you're dealing with a quad injury, not only are you dealing with pain, but you're dealing with a lack of strength, because that muscle is has a contusion in it, so you don't have the same strength you would have. So he may be good enough to play, but I would be highly concerned with him playing, considering how great these two defensive tackles are. You're not going to get an easy matchup with either one of them. If he does play, I would not be shocked to see Zach Martin on his butt a couple of times, just because he may not have that strength in his quads to help him to keep strength while still being balanced. Those are my two biggest issues about that quad injury. If it was just pain tolerance, give him a shot. I have no concerns. The question is, how much strength does he lose because that muscle has a contusion in it? B. Neil Christian saying, should we use our fullback more to help Bass and Smith block on passing downs? Good question. Doesn't look like they want to use the fullback. So even if I say yes, I doubt the team would hear me. But definitely something we should start considering more. And I love how you guys keep leading into all of my next topics, because my next key matchup is not the Cowboys fullback, it's the Dolphins fullback. Alec Ingold versus Damone Clark. So if you watch the tape, Miami runs the ball about 30% with the fullback in front of Raheem Mostert. And this fullback is a very excellent blocker. He does a great job. I've watched them play 4 games. Out of 4 games and him on the field 30% of the time, I've only seen him miss 1 block. That's how good this guy is. Raheem Mostert has 20 touchdowns for a reason. One of those reasons is because this kid, Alec Ingold, eliminates linebackers. So you definitely got to pay a close attention to this one, because if Damone Clark starts to get washed out and Raheem Mostert gets those open lanes, it's going to be see you later, because Raheem Mostert might be 34 years old, but that 4.3 is still there. Jeff saying, I think we should use fullback more, period. Yeah, Miami's one of the few teams that still uses a fullback, and they use him very efficiently and very successfully. And Amanda saying, because McDaniels uses players well and Dallas doesn't. 100% agree with that. See, we got my guy Shane Odom joining us. Shane Odom, thank you for tuning in. He says the Cowboys do have problems, but I'm more concerned about their attitude and the will to fight. To me, last week they were just going through the motions. 100% Shane, 100% agree, Shane Odom, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Once they got down, it looked like everybody just rolled over and died. On the defensive side of the ball, they just got out physical and out schemed. I wouldn't say they gave up. I just think they got beaten to submission. But great points. I always appreciate you tuning in and giving us your great insight. I see the views are still going up. So guys, if you're joining us, even if you don't want to leave a question or a comment, just get in the comments and let me know who you are, where you're from. If this is your first time viewing the show, I like to give shout outs. I like to give people their flowers, because I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to tune into the Fifth Quarter podcast. B. Neil Christian saying our defense was gassed 100%. I mean, they got leaned on the entire game. We talked about offensive line. We talked about defensive line. We talked about fullback. Now we'll go to the skill positions. There are 3 big key matchups in this game that are going to determine the outcome of this game. The first one, we'll go to our side of the ball. And this one is Jalen Ramsey versus CeeDee Lamb. Now, Jalen Ramsey was hurt the first 9-10 weeks of the season. He came back. He started off kind of slow. Now he's in all-pro form. If you watch him the last 2 weeks, they started letting him shadow receivers. And before he came, they have Xavier Howard on their team, and they wouldn't let Xavier Howard shadow receivers. Jalen Ramsey shadowing guys, and he's eliminating good receivers. I mean, he eliminated Garrett Wilson. He did a really good job against DeAndre Hopkins when they let him shadow. So his sights are now set on CD Lamb. I think Lamb is going to see a lot of Ramsey this week. Should be a great matchup. Lamb's definitely going to have his toughest test of the year so far. Amanda saying Ramsey and CD, Blandon, Hill, Gilmore, and Waddle. I have those two, but a little bit differently. When you look at how the Dolphins play offense, they don't move Jalen Waddle a lot. Jalen Waddle primarily plays on the right side of the offense, and that is primarily where Stephon Gilmore plays. So I think we're going to see a whole lot of Jalen Waddle versus Stephon Gilmore. Now, Jalen Waddle is another legit 4-3 guy. So Gilmore is going to have to play off. Waddle is kind of limited in his route concepts, so he's not going to run a lot of quick breaking routes. He's not a really quick twitch guy. He's more of a vertical threat. So I hope Stephon Gilmore has his cardio up. I hope he has his hamstring stretched because it's going to be a track meet on the right side of that offense pretty much all game. Now, with Tyreek Hill, I couldn't put it on one player. It's Tyreek versus the world. This dude is playing at an all-world level right now. He's on pace to be the first wide receiver with 2,000 yards. He's missed 2 games, so he's behind the 8-ball a little bit right now. So he has to really make up for it in the last 3 weeks to get there. I don't know if this is true, Amanda, or not, but I hope it is because we all know what happens when a wide receiver calls Stephon Gilmore old. But Tyreek Hill, back to Tyreek Hill, he's playing at an all-world level, on pace to be the first receiver with 2,000 yards. He's behind the 8-ball right now with this 2,000-yard pace. He has to make up for it. I think they try to let him make up for it this week. He has a great offensive play caller in Mike McDaniels. And the reason I say it's him versus the world is because they don't just play him at wide receiver. They play him at slot. They play him at up back. They play him at split back. They play him at halfback. They put him out wide. They'll run him on some wildcat. They will put him almost in a kneeling position behind the guard and let him get the ball. They will give him the ball from anywhere that they can, and they do a great job of scheming him open. On top of that, they have one of the few teams that attempts to do that whole CFL where the wide receiver's running in motion and they almost snap the ball while he's still running full speed. They get away with that. They're curbing the rules just enough to get by with it because technically the wide receivers cannot be in motion towards the line of scrimmage when the ball snaps. So what they do is they allow him to run full speed across the field, and once he gets close to that point, he stops for a second, the ball gets snapped, and he's turning upfield running full speed with a legit 4-2. And it's hard for anybody to keep up with him. So this key matchup, this is an all hands on deck situation right here. You got to find Tyreek Hill wherever he's at. You got to make sure you have a couple guys on him. That safety has to stay deep and not regular deep. The safety has to be almost, I'm running towards the end zone when the ball gets snapped and I'm not stopping. Because if you slow down for a second, Tyreek Hill will blow right past any safety, even if they think they're deep. So definitely going to be a great key matchup to pay attention to in this week's game. All right, that's pretty much all the key matchups I got right now. We're at 40 minutes. Jeff, you know what I say about the goons. I won't give my goon philosophy over the airways because some people will take it the wrong way. But I personally feel like every team needs to have a goon when they're playing against certain guys. Now, if you want an example of a goon, if you remember Cortland Finnegan, if you remember who Cortland Finnegan is, that's my definition of a goon type guy for the NFL. But yeah, gotta keep an eye on Tyreek Hill. All right, guys, we're at 41 minutes. I got a couple of X factors I want to talk about. Then we got a couple of over unders. So before we continue on with the show, thank you guys for watching. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. I see the likes and the views are pretty much even right now. So thank you guys for that. If you haven't done so already, also go to those two YouTube channels, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be made notified of any future fifth quarter podcast episodes or videos that we'll be posting in the near future. And make sure you guys continue to stick with us, fifth quarter podcast. We're going to be here every week, Wednesday nights, 8:30 Central Standard Time. Okay, let's get back into the show. I got a couple of X factors I want to talk about, and then I want you guys to get back interactive with me, and we'll go through some over-unders. So, a couple of X factors. The first one, I talked about Tyreek Hill as a key matchup. For all the reasons I just gave, he's the number one X factor in this game. Not only for his ability to make big plays and just take over a game, also because he's dealing with the injury right now, and there's a little bit of a question of whether or not he'll play. If he doesn't play, this is a completely different offense. If you go back and watch that Tennessee Titans game, you'll see what I'm talking about. When Tyreek Hill is not on the field as a playmaker or a decoy, this offense gets stagnant quick. So they need him on the field to be able to run their scheme the way they want to run it, because they're not getting anything from Robbie Chosen or Cedric Wilson or I can't even think of the third receiver's name. Is it Craycraft, I believe? Yeah, River Craycraft. That's a great group of names, by the way, at the wide receiver spot. Second X factor. We talk about Raheem Mostert. This guy right here might be the fastest person on the team. Devon Achane, rookie running back. This kid is leading the NFL in yards per carry. I think he's at almost 7 yards a carry, which is ridiculous. He keeps dealing with injuries. He's dealing with the injury right now. But when this kid plays, he can easily give you 7 carries for 80 yards. That's how explosive he is. He has 7 touchdowns on the year. I think he's only played 5 games. It's ridiculous the level of talent and athleticism this kid has. He's dealing with a toe injury right now. For a speed guy who relies on his ability to start and stop and accelerate, a toe injury can be very dangerous for his season. So we got to pay close attention to whether or not he plays. On the offensive side of the ball for Dallas, we have one X factor. And that X factor is Jalen Tolbert. Like I talked about earlier in the show, CeeDee Lamb's going to get shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. Top 5 corner in the game. Brandon Cooks is going to get covered by Xavier Howard, another top 5 corner in the game when healthy. So there are going to be very few opportunities for our wide receivers to make some big plays. Jalen Tolbert, as our third wide receiver, is going to be going against guys by the name of Eli Apple. I'm sure you guys remember that name from New York. Bounced around the league, has been a low PFF graded guy his entire career, and a guy named Nick Needham, who was one of the lowest graded PFF cornerbacks in the NFL so far this year. So Jalen Tolbert is going to have to grow up quick because he's going to have some opportunities to make some big plays and take advantage of them. Now, Jeff has Ferguson as an X factor. You know, I wanted to put Ferguson as an X factor, but I just love Miami safeties too much. Miami has some great safeties who cover tight ends very well, and Javon Holland and Deshaun Elliott. They are top 4 in covering tight ends. So they have an excellent team when it comes to covering tight ends. Just like with CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, I don't know how much room Jake Ferguson's going to have. I think he's talented and athletic enough to be able to take advantage of a couple of plays, but they just cover tight ends so well. I don't know if he's going to be effective. I know Jalen Tolbert's going to have a plus matchup, so I'm hoping that he can grow up fast. B. Neil Christian saying Gallup. I could have put Gallup right here, but to be honest, I've lost all faith in Gallup until he earns it back. So I'm not even going to give him credit for being an X factor. I mean, he has the ability to make a couple of big plays when given the opportunity, but I haven't seen that consistency to say Michael Gallup can come in the game and give us 5 or 6 catches without being a liability. So these are my 3 X factors for this game: Jalen Tolbert, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane. All explosive guys, all have some good matchups, have an opportunity to make a big difference in this game. It's going to be a good weather game in Miami, so it should be a good track meet. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I just like Rachel Nean said, he hasn't deserved to get his name mentioned so far until he can prove otherwise. All right, guys, we're going to go to our last segment of the show, and that is our over-under segment. I got a couple of over-unders for you guys. Just want to gauge the nation a little bit, get an idea of how you feel about some of the matchups that we're going to see in this week's game. So before we get out of here, make sure you guys participate in this last segment of the show. Let me know what you guys think about the game so far. If you have any other questions or comments before we get out of here, feel free to put those in the comments as well. We're at 48 minutes. We're probably going to get out of here for under an hour for the first time since we've been doing the podcast. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, let me know what you think. And until I see some, we'll go to our last segment of the show, which is over under.
Over under.
Okay, so I've talked a little bit about this. Raheem Mostert, 20 touchdowns, super explosive running back, runs behind a fullback a lot. Offensive line is a mash unit right now. So it's kind of hard to tell what we're going to see from this offense this week because we don't know who's playing and how successful they'll be. So based off of last week's game, I put the number at half of the rushing yards that James Cook got. So over under 85 rushing yards for Raheem Mostert. And quickly, Chris Wormsley says over. And B. Neal joins right behind him with the over himself. Hector Rosario saying hopefully under. I agree, hopefully under. Shane Odom saying Brandon Aubrey should be a factor in this game. We need our special teams to step up. 100% agree with that, Shane Odom. I think this is going to be one of those games where you have to have 28 points to win. So I don't know how effective our field goal kicking will be. I think we're going to be in a situation where if we're 3rd and 5 or less and it's a 40, 50-yard field goal, the team may opt to go for it just because they're that afraid of Miami scoring touchdowns. But if it's semi-close, Brandon Aubrey would definitely be a factor. Jeff saying over. I agree, track meet. Rachel Neans saying I hope under. I'm with you guys. I think it's going to be over as well. I love how that fullback blocks. I don't think our linebackers have seen a team that has a fullback that lead blocks. So I'm concerned that that first linebacker is going to get wiped out, and Raheem Mostert is going to have some open lanes to run. The only saving grace I have is I know Eichenberg is terrible at center. It looks like they're going to have a backup right tackle, backup left guard. The right guard is playing, but he's injured as well. They still have Teron Armstead at left tackle, but I just think they have so many injuries. I don't know how that offensive line is going to gel in a running game. But I'm still going to go over because I like Raheem Mostert as a player and a runner. All right, guys, we're going to go to our second over under. And both of these are going to be skill positions because we've talked about those quite a bit. We'll go to Miami side of the ball. Now, we're not 100% certain Tyreek Hill will play, but over under 100 receiving yards for any Miami wide receiver. And if you say over, let me know which one in the comments. Over under 100 receiving yards. You could throw Cedric Wilson there if you want to. You can throw Robbie Anderson / Chosen there if you want to as well. But over under 100 receiving yards, any Miami wide receiver. And this is if it's over, let me know who it is. All right. B. Neil Christian saying Hill over. Chris Wormsley also saying Hill over. If he plays, I 100% agree with you guys. I hate to say it. I think Hill's going to hit 150 this week. I think they scheme him open so well, and they really want him to get that 200 yards receiving. They really want to hang their hat on that as an offense. I feel like they're going to give him the ball as many times as possible. I would be shocked if he doesn't have double digit catches this week, and probably 12 to 15 targets. I expect a huge game for Tyreek Hill. Hector Rosario over if he plays. Over Reek if he plays. Waddle over 2. Track meet. Jeff just going with the track meet theme this week. I hate to say it, Jeff. I agree with you to an extent. I think we can somewhat contain Waddle just because I think because Tyreek Hill's missed 2 games, they're going to just try to get him the ball as much as possible at home. And I think it starts this week against us. All right, so it seems like you guys are pretty confident in that one. Let's go to the Cowboys side of the ball. Over under 70 receiving yards for any of our wide receivers. Remember what I told you. Jalen Ramsey's probably going to shadow CD Lamb. Brandon Cooks, while he does play multiple sides, he's probably going to end up playing a lot on the side where Xavier Howard is. And those are 2 top 5 cornerbacks. Let me know 70 yards receiving for either tight end. Any wide receiver. And if it's over, let me know which one you think it is. Seems like the comments are coming in a lot slower for this one. I guess you guys need a little bit more time to think about it. Jeff sticking with his track meet theme. He thinks it's a track meet on both sides. Chris Wormsley saying over for Lamb. B. Neal also saying over for Lamb. I think Ramsey shuts him down, honestly. I can see the frustration. Amanda pointed it out earlier. Lamb gets frustrated a lot. Ramsey's one of those corners who's going to play the mental game as well as the physical game. He's going to get in your head. He's going to be real chippy. Because he has that defensive MVP reputation, refs are a little bit more lenient on him when it comes to throwing flags. I think Lamb's going to get frustrated this game, and I think it's going to be a problem. For me, I think if anybody goes over 70, it'll be Brandon Cooks, just because of the matchup. Xavier Howard, while he does have great ball skills, he's not extremely athletic. We don't throw the ball deep often, but I think if we're have any chance of moving the ball vertically, it has to be against Xavier Howard or one of those lesser corners on the opposite side. Because I think Brandon Cooks, because he moves a little bit, I think he'll probably get lined up against Eli Apple a little bit as well, and he'll definitely take advantage of those. Jeff says, I think Lamb gets moved a lot in this game. I think he does also. The problem is Jalen Ramsey will follow him inside, outside, left, right. Wherever Lamb goes, Ramsey's going to be there. Ramsey 6'2", 215, legit 4.4 speed, great short shuttle. Overall, just a great matchup. He matches up very well athletically as well as physically with CeeDee Lamb. I think it's going to be a test. Jeff says you never seen Ramsey play in the slot. He's played in the slot quite a bit this year. He played in the slot. He played in the slot quite a bit with the Rams when he was there. Actually, he played almost exclusively in the slot. Now they did play him as more of a safety corner hybrid when he was with the Rams, but he was inside a lot. He wasn't necessarily covering the slot. But the last couple of weeks, he was following Garrett Wilson all last week. He followed DeAndre Hopkins quite a bit the week before. He's traveling inside and out with receivers. Jeff saying the inner inside slot. I think he does this week. I'm concerned about that matchup. Shane Odom saying over for CeeDee Lamb. I can see Cowboys throwing more slants over the middle. I don't know how I feel about throwing slants at Jalen Ramsey, but we'll see how it goes. Chris Wormsley saying Lamb gonna get it done, but I like Cooks for some big plays. I think this has to be a big play game because I think Miami's gonna have a lot of them. And if you don't want to let that crowd take over the game, you got to get some big plays in there also. All right, guys, I got one more over under, and as you guys know, my last over under is usually an either or for both sides of the ball. So I just mentioned that the Dolphins are number 2 in sacks in NFL. Both of their defensive tackles have over 7 sacks. Bradley Chubb, who's their premier pass rusher on the outside, has 9.5 sacks. These guys know how to get after the quarterback. TJ Bass is probably going to play for Zach Martin. But on the opposite side, the Dolphins are probably going to be missing 3 offensive line starters. Which team has more sacks in this game? Last caveat, Tua has the fastest release of any quarterback in the NFL this year. So let me know what you think in the comments. Which team has more sacks? B. Neal talking about the wide receiver saying I could even see Turpin going over. Now, that's a name I didn't even bring up, B. Neal, but I could definitely see Turpin having a big game this week as well. B. Michael Davis, thank you for joining us, says both teams match horrible against each other, but Dallas doesn't lose back-to-back games under McCarthy. We shall see. You know what? A lot of interesting matchups. You bring that up, B. Michael Davis. Dallas doesn't lose back-to-back games. That's true. But Dallas has been terrible on the road. And Miami has been almost as impressive at home as we have been. I think they're undefeated at home, and they have like a plus 15 to 17 point differential when it comes to home games. So definitely going to be a good matchup to pay attention to. All right. Back to the sack question. Chris Wormsley say Cowboys. Hector Rosario says Dallas. Michael Davis saying Dolphins O-line all mispractice. Give me Micah. B. Neal saying Cowboys have at least 4 sacks. Jeff saying Dallas if they rush Micah up the middle. Rachel Nean saying they lost one at home. That's true. They lost the game at home against Tennessee, but that was the game that Tyreek Hill went out. So, like I said, they're a completely different team when Tyreek Hill doesn't play. Hopefully he doesn't play this week or he's limited. So we can take advantage of some of that as well. But great point. Miami and B Neil Christian backing her up, saying Miami lost one at home. Yeah, they lost to the Titans at home, which is a bad team in my opinion. But caveat: Tyreek Hill was out. Um, Offense was just completely stagnant. I mean, the defense had to score a touchdown in that game to even make it competitive. So very interesting dynamic of how they look with and without Tyreek Hill. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I have. I'll stay on a few more minutes, see if you guys have any more questions or comments for me regarding last week's game, this week's matchup. Anything you want to know schematically, anything you guys want to see me add to the show. I'm still working on getting all 22 or just overall game footage. I want to start doing videos every week, even if it's not on this show. I'm gonna do those outside the show and post them. Um, my schedule's starting to clear up a little bit more, so I will start to be able to do more pregame shows. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I know a lot of you guys haven't seen a pregame show yet, so I'm gonna make sure I get more consistent with those. B Neil Christian asking if Bland gets another pick six this week. Again, this is a very vertical team. I talked about this before with Buffalo. When you're running with vertical teams who don't run a lot of slants and crossers and comebacks, it's hard to get the situation to get a pick six. I can see an interception. Pick six would be kind of hard to get. Jeff says, interesting to think what type of defense we run this week. What are your thoughts? To be honest, I think we see more. I think we see what we saw last week. I don't think they go away from anything. I think Dan Quinn really likes the team personnel and the team schematics. Looking at Miami, they can't do the same thing Buffalo did, so I don't think we have to be concerned about that. Now they can run the ball, but they're going to do it a different way. It's going to be with the fullback leading instead of that tackle pulling. So hopefully we can offset that a little bit. um, I would love to see Carl Davis play more on the inside. I love to see Micah play more on the inside. I don't think our defense changes much. Hopefully Malik Hooker's back. I think it's really going to be just a personnel thing than a schematic thing. Just gotta hope we can slow down Tyreek Hill. Bobby Taylor saying yes, get them cheating ass refs off the field. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen, Bobby Taylor. The refs are definitely out to get us, especially away from home. They've been out for Micah Parsons all year. I almost hope somebody would tell him to get off the internet and stop doing his podcast. I mean, he has the right to freedom of speech, but when you're calling people out left and right as a current NFL player, the only thing that they can really do to you is not give you calls on the field. And I feel like that might have a slight that might be the slight effect of him not getting those holding calls. Him calling people out on his podcast, but that's the conspiracy theorist in me. I hope it's not the case, but kind of a coincidence. We can see these blatant holding calls he's not getting, and he's calling people out on his podcast every week. B Neil Christian, do you think the Giants have a chance against the Eagles? Zero chance. Now Arizona, on the other hand, the following week, I think Arizona has a really good chance. NFC West, all those teams play the same style. They all play a West Coast vertical offense. They all have running backs that love to run off tackle. Their offensive line play isn't the best, but they run their schemes the way they're supposed to run them. They all have excellent tight ends who can make big plays. These are all weaknesses of the Philadelphia Eagles, by the way. And the Cardinals have an X factor in Kyler Murray, who they haven't seen before. So I think the Cardinals have a really good chance to beat the Eagles if Hollywood Brown plays, because they don't have an answer for him. They definitely don't have an answer for Trey McKitty. James Conner has the ability to take over games if given opportunity. And Kyler Murray, with his scrambling ability, if he has his head in the game, he can make some game changing plays. And just like Seattle, you keep it close, you get down to the last drive. Their defense hasn't shown the ability to stop anybody passing the ball. You have a chance to get a touchdown, and then you just gotta hope that their offense doesn't make a big play to take the lead. So Arizona definitely has a shot. I actually like Arizona a lot in that game. Giants, I don't think they have a chance. Shane Odom wants to go back to his first comment. It's about attitude and need to cut down on penalties. I mean, I agree with you. Whether they can or cannot cut down penalties, that's to be seen. I wish we had a easy button we could press that would stop these guys from making boneheaded calls or to make the ref start to call a few more holdings against Micah. But at this point, that's really just wishful thinking, Shane Odom. Jeff says, I think the Giants get one of the two matchups. Wishful thinking, Jeff. I hope that's the case. I don't see it happening. I would love to come back on the show next week and say I was wrong, but that one's going to be a tall task. Their defense is playing with some very high spirits right now. I say that. I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with the Eagles offensively. Tommy DeVito's a good story right now, but even though Philly is weak against the pass, the Giants just don't have enough to make it happen. Cy Witherspoon, which players will make the biggest impact for the Cowboys, win or lose? I think our linebackers are definitely going to be important this week just because Miami loves to use their fullback as a lead blocker. So that linebacker that's taking on that block has to at least stay competitive when he gets blocked to not just open up a rushing lane. I talked about this in key matchups. So I'm pretty much just going over key matchups again. Zach Martin dealing with that quad injury. If he has a loss of power because of the contusion in his muscle, I don't think he's going to be able to play. And if he does, he's going to go against probably the best pass rushing defensive tackle in the NFL right now in Christian Wilkins. And Zach Seiler is no slouch with 7.5 sacks. So I think our guards are really going to have to play their best game this week against two defensive tackles who are excellent against the run and the pass, which is a anomaly for a team to have two defensive tackles who can do that. I think one of our receivers is going to have to step up. Definitely got to see that one. And maybe Jake Ferguson. That team is just so good against the tight end. I hope he can do something. I'm just concerned. They're just great against tight ends. Jeff saying DeVito is an X factor and Jalen is an F up waiting to happen. I can't put DeVito as that big of an X factor. It's going to take 30 points to beat the Eagles. I don't think the Giants can put up 30. B. Neal saying McCarthy had that fossil cash that said that Fossil cashed that block last week, but we had a return set up. I'm assuming you're talking about the Sam Williams penalty. I mean, the play call was good. The execution was terrible. And that's just all a part of Sam Williams. Talking about Sam Williams, I don't know if our fans realize this or not. Sam Williams has not played a lot of football. I was fortunate enough that one of my close friends coached him in college at his Northeast Community College. If you saw my old podcast, Coach Webb, he came on the show a couple of times. Very knowledgeable guy. Before the draft, he told me Dan Quinn was heavily recruiting Sam Williams. I knew Sam Williams was going to be the second round pick in January, honestly, because that's how high Dan Quinn thought about him. He wanted to take him in the first, but he couldn't get the team on board. But there was no way he was going past second. Sam Williams at junior college and high school, he didn't know what football was, honestly. He was just an athletic freak who could go out there and just outrun and out physical everybody. I was told he didn't even get in the weight room until his second year of college. That was just natural raw ability. He transferred and went to Ole Miss, When he got to Ole Miss, he finally learned how to do some pass rush moves. He only had two. He had a rip and he had a stiff arm. That was it. That's all he had. That's all he knew. He got 9.5 sacks in the SEC. He gets to the NFL. He essentially is still just a raw, freaky athlete learning the position. I mean, I haven't talked about this yet, but I don't know if you guys realize this. Sam Williams is our gunner on punt. Think about that for a second. If you know what the gunner is, the gunner position is normally a spot where you put your fastest cornerback because they have to be the first person down the field to make a tackle on the punt returner. And Sam Williams is playing that role for us, just like Jeff said. Before Sam Williams played that role was played by CJ Goodwin, who runs a 4.2. That lets you know the type of freaky athleticism that Sam Williams possesses. Now, the team has not been able to unlock that yet, but when they do, they could have a special player. The problem is, can and will they unlock it? So I say all that to say, you're going to get some great plays from Sam Williams. You're going to get some boneheaded plays from Sam Williams, but it's all a part of his learning process. I mean, he made a great play. He broke through. He got back there like he was supposed to. He didn't understand that you don't leave your feet and you go for the kicker's foot. You don't go at the kicker. That should be something that's easily correctable. You may see him come back and block a kick this week. But yeah, great question. Great comment, B. Neil Christian, talking about Fossil. I don't blame that on Fossil. I just blame it on Sam Williams just not understanding the game of football like he should for an NFL player. All right, guys. So we're at hour 13 minutes. Great show tonight. Thank you, everybody who's been consistently leaving questions and comments. I always appreciate talking shop with fellow Cowboys fans. You guys fuel the Fifth Quarter Podcast Nation, and I would not be here if not for you guys. So once again, thank you guys for watching. I will be back this Sunday at 11:15 for our pregame show. And also make sure you join us next week, 8:30 Central Standard Time, same location, for what I hope to be a Victory Wednesday on the Fifth Quarter Podcast as we recap this game against the Miami Dolphins and we look ahead to next week's game, which is a big NFC conference battle with the Detroit Lions. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate that, B. Neil Christian. Great questions, great comments. You were just as influential in this show as I was sitting here on camera. Rachel Nen, as always, appreciate your support. Appreciate you tuning in. Great questions and comments as well. Jeff asking, does Turpin get one this week? I mean, I don't even know at this point. I think he keeps getting closer and closer. We'll see what happens when the game progresses. But so far, I just can't say that Turpin's going to get a shot. I see we got my guy Nick's joining us. Nick, thank you for tuning in. I know you're probably going to go live soon, so I appreciate you ducking your head into the Fifth Quarter Podcast for a few minutes before I get out of here. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Once again, join us next week, 8:30 Central Standard Time, for another episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm working on getting a Detroit Lion podcaster to join me. They have a couple of good guys that I've been following, so hopefully they can give us some insight. I may have another special guest join us as well, so make sure you guys tune in to see who that may be. As always, thank you guys for watching. I always appreciate your support, and let's go Cowboys. I'll see you next week.